The first thing Anna noticed was the scent. Not the usual cedar and ink scent of her husband's office, but something sweet, floral, too intimate for polished mahogany and spreadsheets. It lingered on the cuff of his shirt, faint but undeniable, like a whisper she wasn't meant to hear. She pressed her face closer, inhaled again. Gardenia. Her stomach turned. His cologne had always been musk and smoke, never flowers. Late night again, she'd asked him the evening before, watching him unlace his shoes in the dark. His movements were too careful, his voice too soft, every word rehearsed. Client dinner, he'd murmured. You know how it is? She didn't know how it was. He worked in finance, surrounded by suits who measured loyalty in digits and indulgence in secrecy. But tonight, standing in the quiet of their bedroom, the scent clung to her fingers, and she realized something inside her had shifted, like a bridge cracking under invisible weight. For 2 weeks, Anna said nothing. She kept the rhythm of her life intact. Coffee at 7, clients at 9, yoga at 6. But everything felt staged, like she was performing the life of someone who trusted her husband. The truth nested beneath her ribs, growing sharper each day. Then one morning, she found a text on his phone. It wasn't even hidden, just there on the screen, like arrogance disguised as carelessness. Lunch again at the glassroom? Bring the file, winky face. The sender's name was Elise B. She didn't need to ask who Elise was. Anna had met her once. The banker, blonde, poised, with eyes that weighed every person she met. The kind of woman who smiled with precision. Her hands trembled so hard, she almost dropped the phone. When he walked into the kitchen moments later, humming, adjusting his cufflinks, she couldn't look at him, couldn't form words. The world had tilted, and she was still pretending gravity hadn't changed. That evening, she followed him. It wasn't planned. She just drove, watched him leave the office in his navy suit, watched him walk into the glass room with that same careless grace he used to have for her. And then she saw her, Elise, gliding in 5 minutes later, every inch of her shimmering under the city lights. Anna sat in her car, the steering wheel digging into her palms, the world narrowing into a single cinematic frame. The restaurant's glass walls glowed golden. Inside, their silhouettes leaned close, heads tilted, laughter sharp and private. Her chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. She wanted to storm in, to shatter the glass and scream, but instead she just watched. Watched until the laughter stopped being sound and became knife edges scraping against her heart. When they finally rose from the table, Elise's hand brushed his arm. Quick, intimate, practiced. That was all it took. Anna drove home in silence, her face numb, her mind blank. Somewhere between the stoplights, grief turned into clarity. He confessed 3 days later, cornered by her calmness. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said, voice cracking. It was complicated. She understood the pressure, the work, things you don't. It was the way he said you don't that broke her. She stared at him across the table, the same table where they'd planned their future, their trips, their silly dreams, and felt the weight of every moment he'd stolen from her. Do you even hear yourself? She whispered. You talk like I'm an inconvenience. I love you, Anna. I just lost track of things. People don't lose track of fidelity, James. They choose. He flinched, and for the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt infinite, terrifyingly awake. After he left, the house became a hollow shell. But silence has a way of clarifying things. She went through their accounts, the joint investments, the company filings. He'd always handled the finances, assuming she wouldn't notice. But she was an architect, trained to see structure, to recognize patterns. And soon she saw one here, too. Buried in the paperwork were transactions that led back to Elise's firm. Small transfers at first, then larger. Money quietly moved through shell accounts. It wasn't just betrayal of love. It was theft and arrogance. Anna didn't confront him this time. She built a plan. She spent months in quiet fury, channeling heartbreak into focus. She met lawyers, accountants, investors. Slowly, methodically, she dismantled the empire he'd built on deception. She found the cracks, widened them, and when the time came, she walked through. When she launched her design firm 6 months later, she did it with capital recovered from his misdeeds. Not stolen, earned. Every dollar accounted for. Her first project was a high-rise commissioned by a rival bank. The same one that had fired Elise after an internal audit Anna discreetly initiated. Poetic justice, wrapped in professionalism. 2 years later, she saw them again. A charity gala. He looked older, his smile forced. Elise wore red, the color of survival and regret. They approached her with politeness, so thin it might shatter. "Anna," he said, forcing warmth. "You look well." She smiled, radiant, unbothered. "I am." Elise glanced at her diamond bracelet. Subtle, understated, worth more than their combined pride. "We heard your firm's doing incredibly," she said, tone brittle. Anna sipped her champagne. "Better than I imagined. Success comes easier when there's no one lying beside you." The silence that followed was exquisite. Later that night, she stood alone on the balcony, city lights flickering below like stars that had fallen just for her. The air was cool, her heart steady. For the first time in years, she felt something close to peace. She thought of that night outside the glass room, of the woman she'd been, trembling, fragile, unsure. That woman was gone. What remained was someone tempered by betrayal, sharpened by survival. Love, she realized, was not always gentle. Sometimes it burned you down so you could see what you were made of. She lifted her glass to the skyline. "To new beginnings," she whispered, "and to the ones who taught me what not to settle for." Below her, the city roared, alive, unforgiving, beautiful, just like her.